Daniel and I stand in line waiting for the bus like we're standing in line for an amusement park ride. Daniel keeps bouncing on his toes and glancing down the street as though he expects it to suddenly appear at a moment's notice. It's just a bus, I remind him, like a car, or in your case, a horse, probably, although it doesn't have feelings. But why isn't it here yet? Daniel asks as he glances at me. I'm ready for it to be here, and it's not here. Do we need to concentrate harder? Concentrate? I blink at him. The bus isn't magic, Daniel. It says it'll get here at a certain time, but sometimes it runs late, just like people do. Sometimes it gets held up by traffic. That's just the way it works. Daniel crosses his arms over his chest and sulks. I can't believe that he was old enough to be on his own, and yet he apparently wasn't old enough to understand how buses worked. Fortunately, the bus finally comes, and Daniel follows me inside and slips into the seat next to me. So, how does it know where we want to go? He asks. Well, this is more of a shuttle than a real bus, I explain. In cities, buses make multiple stops, but this shuttle just goes between here and the mall at scheduled times. What if we want to go somewhere outside of the mall? Daniel asks. How do we get there? We don't, I reply sternly. Remember, Daniel, going to the mall, mixing with the outside world, that's a privilege that we're awarded for keeping our magic a secret. We're not allowed to go anywhere besides the mall, except for the Glen, but that's a magical restaurant only about a block or away from the mall, so that's okay. Everywhere else is off limits. That doesn't seem fair, Daniel says as he crosses his arms over his chest. How am I going to get the real American experience if I can't go where I want to go? Think about it this way. At least you're getting the real Iris Academy student experience, I remind him. Although, I mean, if you really want to explore the world that badly, you can always ask your parents to talk to Professor Potsdam and make an exception for you. I'm sure Hieronymous would love to take you to an arcade. What's an arcade? Daniel asks, and it's all I can do not to physically facepalm myself. I can show you in the mall, I tell him. There's a miniature one there. Basically, it's a room filled with video games. Some of them, like the claw machine, let you win prizes. Keep in mind that there's no magic involved with these, and they're usually rigged just to eat people's money. Daniel shakes his head. If people know it's rigged, why do they play? Because of the excitement, I tell him. Because people think that they're going to lose, but then when they win, it's an unexpected jolt of happiness. Sometimes life is more fun if you don't control the outcome. Daniel says, as if he's considering this. Honestly, I don't think I'd want to play if I wasn't guaranteed to win something. I'm not sure what I'm more shocked by, the candor of his answer or his answer itself. Sometimes experience is the best prize, I tell him. That sounds like something Professor Grabiner would say, Daniel says. Although it seems strange to call him that. He's not only a professor, but just calling him Hieronymous seems too forward. I consider this. I call him Hieronymous, but that's because he's been given me explicit permission to. What do your parents call him? Hieronymous Grabiner, Daniel tells me. The full name. He's that Grabiner. I roll my eyes as I sulk inwardly. His mother seemed nice enough, and we seemed friendly with each other through our written correspondence, but I could tell it was going to take a lot more than a few flowers to improve their perception of Hieronymous. I hadn't brought him up in my letters just yet, but there was still plenty of time to address that later. Fortunately, we arrive at the mall, and Daniel seems confused as we enter the lobby. He stands near the doorway, staring down the long line of shops and storefronts in front of him. So, what do people do here? They shop, I tell him. People come here to buy the things they want. Or sometimes they come here to look at the things they want. Some people can't afford to buy what they want all the time, but they dream of having it anyway, and there's a sort of pleasure that comes from just looking at something. They call that window shopping. Why a window, Daniel asks, but I just shrug. I don't know. That's just what it's called. There's an arcade in the back. There's a food court over there to the left here where they serve a lot of different American kinds of foods. And there's a magic shop in the far back. There's a glamour that disguises the shop front, but you'll be able to see it once you get closer. And what about me? Daniel asks as he watches the people that pass us by. What do people expect me to do here? I shake my head. You can do whatever you want, Daniel. Look at them. They just go about their lives doing whatever they want to do. You don't have any rules or regulations here. You can go into whatever stores you want to go into. You can play whatever games that you want to play. You can buy anything you want to buy as long as you have the money for it. Remember, people here don't know who you are, and it may sound cruel, but people don't really care about you. To them, you're just an ordinary student at a private school. So I can do whatever I want, Daniel repeats to himself, as if this was a novel concept to him. Within reason, I warn him. Remember, no magic. You're an ordinary boy right now. So, ordinary boy Daniel Callister, tell me, where'd you want to go? What'd you want to do? I want to look at the stuff they sell here, Daniel says, and then we'll see. That sounds like a plan. We begin walking through the shops. Some stores Daniel wants to go in and explore, like the little trinket shop. It reminds me of home, and I'm honestly a little bit glad when we leave. I notice that he doesn't like to go in any of the clothing stores. He just stares at the poised mannequins from beyond the glass and then shrugs before walking away. Idly, I can't help but wonder if he had to wear a uniform at home too. As we walk along, suddenly Daniel grabs my hand. I pause for a moment and look down at our clasped hands before looking back up at him. Oh? Everyone else is, Daniel says as he glances around. It's true. There do seem to be a large number of couples walking around the mall this time in the afternoon, and most, if not all, are holding hands. That's something that boyfriends and girlfriends do, I tease. Are we dating? Oh, Daniel says awkwardly as he drops my hand. No, I guess not. It's fine, I say as I take his hand. I'll pretend to be your girlfriend for the day so you don't get to feel left out. If you want, Daniel replies as he flushes slightly. Can we go to the magic shop now? Of course, I reply as I lead him in that direction. As we get closer, the boarded-up storefront begins to take shape, revealing the familiar exterior of the magic shop. As we enter, I lead Daniel over to the wall of goods specifically meant for Iris Academy students. Here's where you have your enchantments, I show him, and here's where you have your glamours, if you're interested in adding bat wings or a tiara to your ensemble. I think I'll pass, Daniel says as he looks back at the enchantments. I want one of these, but I haven't saved up enough allowance for one yet. I hesitate. Hieronymous had given me more than enough money, but at the same time, I didn't want to possibly insult him by buying him something he could probably afford himself. Something to look forward to, then, I say, as we turn around and leave the shop. As we start to head over to the arcade, I suddenly spot Virginia heading towards us. Tori! Just the girl I wanted to see. Hi there, Virginia, I say as I gesture to Daniel. This is... Don't care. I need your help immediately, Virginia says as she grabs my arm and begins to drag me after her. Daniel just walks along behind us as she drags me towards the food court. Immediately, I ask. Do you need me to buy you lunch again? Worse, Virginia replies. Ellen left me all alone in the food court, and I am craving a double-stuffed Bunch of Crunch sundae. Oh, no, Virginia, I say as I try to pull out of her grasp. That's meant for like 10 people. I told you last year. Never again. A double-stuffed bunch of what? Daniel asks as Virginia turns desperately to him. You like ice cream, don't you? She asks, fishing for a name. Daniel, he tells her, and I don't think I've ever had it. Virginia can't conceal the look of shock and alarm on her face. Okay, then you two sit right here. Virginia physically forces me into a booth as Daniel slips in beside me, and I will be right back. With that, she turns and disappears into the crowd. You're making a huge mistake, I warn him as I watch her go. Your parents are never going to forgive me if you fall into a sugar coma and die. What's a sugar coma? Daniel asks. Can you really fall into a coma if you eat too many sweets? I pause for a moment as I consider this. I'm not entirely sure, but if anyone is going to find out, it's going to be Virginia. You said you've never had ice cream, but do you eat a lot of sweets back at home? Daniel just shakes his head. Now and then on special occasions, like my birthday, but not usually. I figured as much, I reply. Hieronymous didn't seem to have much of a sweet tooth either. I'm wondering if it's a difference in magical customs or culture when Virginia suddenly comes back to the table with a tray of ice cream. Is that just for you? Daniel asks, his eyes wide. That's for all of us now, I say, because you volunteered. Oh, I thought you weren't interested, Virginia teases as she hands me a spoon. I might as well, I sigh. If I let the two of you finish this off yourselves and you don't make it, Grabby will never let me hear the end of it. Speaking of, Virginia says, and I stop eating as I watch her carefully. Saw you two holding hands earlier. What's that about? I'm teaching Daniel the finer points of dating, I explain without the slightest bit of hesitation. Honestly, I wasn't even worried about the implications. I wasn't interested in Daniel, and I couldn't imagine Daniel was interested in me. He wants to learn all the social aspects of American teenage culture, and they don't exactly do dating where he's from. They don't? Virginia asks, but Daniel just shakes his head. Well, if this is your first official date, it's appropriate that it ends in ice cream. That's what people who love each other do. They share ice cream. Like in the movies, Daniel asks. I saw a movie once where they went to a diner and ate ice cream, but now that I think on it, it might have been a milkshake. It was in black and white. Oh, those movies are boring, Virginia shrugs. But if you're bringing a girl on a date, make sure there's food involved. Girls love food. Daniel turns to me and I just shrug. Depends on the girl, I reply succinctly. Oh, come on, Virginia teases. You had your first date with your, favorite person at the Glen. You've told me all about the hot, shy date. Hot because I burned my tongue, I tell Daniel quickly. Don't read too much into it. Daniel pauses for a moment and looks me up and down. So, do you have a boyfriend? I do, I admit slowly as Virginia giggles. I have a very special someone in my life. Let's leave it at that. A very special someone, Virginia teases, and I roll my eyes. Do you have a boyfriend? Daniel asks Virginia, and she just grins as she shakes her head. I have no time in my life for romance, she tells him proudly. I'm too busy taking care of my brother and juggling sports club. You have a club where you juggle sports? Daniel asks, but I just shake my head as Virginia stares at him in confusion. Where we play sports, I explain. Virginia runs it. I was thinking about bringing you by on Sunday, but now that you know about it, you'll definitely be there. Virginia finishes for me. We're playing soccer this week. It's Tori's favorite. Because I like accidentally kicking people in the head with a ball, I explain. Accidentally, Virginia whispers to Daniel, and I roll my eyes. Will there be other girls there? Daniel asks out of nowhere, and Virginia and I can't help but look at each other as we burst into a fit of giggles. Daniel, you are on a date with the two prettiest girls in school right now, Virginia tells him. Cool your heels. Cool my... Daniel asks blankly, but Virginia can't stop herself from howling with laughter, and eventually I join her. When I finally make it back into my room that night, I stumble through the door and collapse on the floor holding my stomach. Don't get up, I mumble to Hieronymous, who is already in bed reading. I'll be fine. He raises an eyebrow and barely glances at me over the top of the book. I take it you went to the mall with Miss Danson again, despite the fact that you always end up in this condition. It's not my fault, I whimper as I roll onto my back, still keeping my arms tucked firmly around my stomach. I said no. Daniel said yes. Now Hieronymous does set down his book. And is he all right? Before I answer that, I need to know something, I say as I roll over onto my side. Is it really possible to die from a sugar coma?